Welcome to the North Group podcast. At North Group, we are often invited into organizations to influence leadership and organizational behavior. It is absolutely fascinating work. I'm your host, Roger North, and we'd like to invite you into that conversation. I'm welcoming my good friend and partner, Jerry Murray, to our podcast this morning. And Jerry, in our previous podcast, my good friend and partner, your good friend and partner, Craig Schloniger and I were talking about how we as organizational health and development consultants can help support our clients when they have issues in areas in which we are not experts. Mm-hmm. And I think we do a pretty good job, if not a really good job, at sticking to our knitting, meaning, hey, we're going to advise and help you in areas in which we have expertise and listen to you in areas where we don't. But we may find that there's an overlap between the two.
Right.
And as Craig was navigating around a number of different clients over the last few months, he realized, and he shared this in the last podcast, that he was hearing three central issues almost everywhere he went, and that many of the conversations were fitting into those three categories. You know what they are. Number one that he was hearing was what we're all hearing about in the broader press and just about everywhere we go, which is a perceived worker shortage.
Yes.
That's affecting lots of different industries, lots of different services, and so forth. So that was one. The second one was he talked about was supply chain issues, which has a lot of different manifestations, certainly price increases, shortage of goods, shortage of component goods, slowing down manufacturing and distribution, et cetera, et cetera. And Craig and I talked about that at length. Mm-hmm. The third one, which I'm not sure I would have expected, but the more I think about it, I'm probably hearing some of it or maybe inferring some of it too, is hearing a lot of people just express that they're tired. Mm-hmm. The words they use may differ. So do those three themes sound like they connect the conversations you're having as well? Do they sound familiar?
They do, yeah. All three of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think you nailed it.
The one that's certainly getting the most press, I mean, we're seeing it on the news, we're seeing it in the periodicals, the newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the business magazines that we read, is this worker shortage. Mm-hmm. And it, for a while there, I thought maybe it's just service industries. You know, mm-hmm. it's hospitality. They were shut down for a while, lost a lot of their workers. Maybe it's healthcare, where there were additional concerns around health concerns and low paid workers and difficult jobs and things of that nature. But just in the past few months, it seems to have gone almost
everywhere,
completely across the spectrum, which mm-hmm. is, I don't know that I remember something proliferating that quickly, because the statistics don't really support it, mm-hmm. but the incidents do.
They do.
So what would be our role? Like, if you were going to say, I'm so tired of hearing about this, and yet I have to be helpful to my clients. I'm not going to be able to magically produce all the healthcare workers or all the restaurant servers that they need. What's one thing you would say to a client that they really have to stick to as they work their way through that challenge?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because this particular challenge may even be a feeder to one of the other challenges you mentioned, which is being tired.
Okay,
right?
Very well may be.
If we have a need for additional workers in key positions, and we're having to cover for them. In terms of what I'd say to them, because there are really good companies out there, and there are a number of great positions, and we're all vying for fantastic talent. The number one thing you can do is create a work environment where people want to work, mm-hmm. where there is a buzz mm-hmm. about this business, that they've got a mission where people know how to be successful for them mm-hmm. as an individual, as an organization. They're working together. They've got an opportunity to use their voice. And I think that's something a leadership team can really rally around. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. when they come to their leadership team meetings, they can be asking questions and giving observations of their team's experiences with the team in their roles. And I think what's important with that is that each leader in the organization knows one thing that they can be doing right now to help build that. A lot of times when we're undergoing hiring processes, we're waiting. There's mm-hmm. an advertisement. Mm-hmm. Okay, where are mm-hmm. they? Have we received any responses to the advertisement? Did they look good? What do the resumes look like? And it just seems like a waiting game. And hiring processes are inherently long. They can be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and beyond, certainly in this environment. So what's something I can be doing right now? And part of it might be, let's create a buzz about what it's like to work here. Another piece could be, I want to be networking really, really well. We want everyone on our team to know what they can be doing to contribute to the process.
So would you experience any of your clients saying, hey, Jerry, I know you're about helping us create great leadership here. We know that you believe, and so do we, that great leadership is eventually should produce a great culture, a great work environment that sticks. People want to stay there. But right now, we've got all these open-ended positions. We don't have people. Let's stop talking about that and let's solve this problem.
Right.
What would you say to that?
I wish it were that simple. I wish we could just ignore the need for leadership discipline. I wish we could cut corners at this point and just make things happen. It's dangerous when we do.
It would be the worst time to abandon that commitment.
Yes. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of different environments and leadership experiences, but it always comes back to we want healthy organizations led by disciplined approaches to leadership. People are informed, expectations are clear, they know how they can be successful, they're recognized when they are. We cheer for the organization first, even over individuals, but individuals come along and we celebrate together. And these require intentionality and they create the buzz, and those are the types of companies that people want to work for.
And if I could add one to that, which you probably were including in one of those, but it's to know that there's one person, at least one person in that company that is absolutely sold out to my success. I want to tell a quick story in this regard. This goes back 30 some years of my first professional job out of college. And it was a technical kind of job. But I had a supervisor there who I thought was old, but when I look back, he's probably in his mid-30s. And he was a little bit of a quirky kind of fellow, but I absolutely knew there was something about the way he interacted with me, the way he encouraged me, the way he pushed me ahead a little bit with my learning process, more than a little bit really, that I knew he was for me. Now, I didn't use that language back then, but when it hit home was the first time I ever got another job offer. And, had gotten some credentials in that business. And so eventually I knew I probably had to move on from that company. But when I got that first job offer, and I took the interview and everything, and I got the offer, and from a monetary perspective, it was, in those days, it was very significant by a percentage. I couldn't leave that guy.
How about that?
And I think that built a belief in me way back then when there weren't all the books out there. Nobody used the term culture. Nobody was overly worried about the working environment. But that was a building block to the belief system we have now at North Group to realize I stayed at that company 3 more years.
Wow.
When I probably, from a pure career progression standpoint, probably should have left 2 years before I did. I stayed there for him.
What's interesting is the multiplicative impact of that leader's investment in you. Eventually,
100%.
that seed that blossomed had something to do with your beliefs that drove you to be the founder of North Group and for the work that we do. And so for that, I'm thankful to this guy that I don't know. It reminds me too, when you think of investing in someone, what does that mean? For some people, it's very obvious. There's an author that we both know, Patrick Lencioni. He talks about the 3 signs of a miserable job. He likes to create book titles that talk about what not to do, but really clearly what to do. And we want people to be known. Yeah. So let's avoid anonymity.
About anonymity, yep.
That's right. We want people to be known. We want them to be relevant. We want to know what their contributions are in the organization, contribute to the overall success and feeds the overall success. And we want them in some way to be measurable. They know how they're going to know if they're successful.
They don't have to ask somebody else if they've had a productive day.
That's right.
They can measure it themselves.
So we want to wake up anticipating how to provide answers to those 3 questions to them. And that's a great just template or agenda in your mind for how to invest in someone.
Yeah, thanks for that. I read that book and I'm happy to be reminded of it. Yeah. I think as Craig was talking about these 3 issues that keep coming up for him, and I think keep coming up for you and me and certainly others of our colleagues here at North Group, that perhaps the first two that he identified, the one we were just talking about, the worker shortage and all the effort that we're having to put into just meet the demand of our business. And then the second one, the supply chain issues and all the related issues that seem to be producing a certain tiredness, perhaps even exhaustion on the part of leaders who carry the burden of these other two challenges. Are you hearing that? And how are you helping your clients address that? Or perhaps they're not quite there yet, but we need to be encouraging them to follow disciplines and practices that will make sure that they don't get there.
Right, right. Sometimes a leader is demonstrating the symptoms of burnout or emotional exhaustion, and people around them can notice those symptoms, but they haven't yet.
Or are unwilling to admit.
Yeah, sometimes it's unwilling to admit. Sometimes they feel guilty. They feel tired. They feel lack of motivation. The things that they normally are leading in the organization, they're not. And because they're such get it done people and so responsible that they think, oh, I just need to be stronger, and they might even feel a pang of guilt related to it. So it can come on. Our conversations in regard to discovering self-awareness, checking in regard to how individuals are doing, how they're taking care of themselves, what's on their plate. Often they can reveal these underlying symptoms in a way where we can put them together and say, okay, have you noticed, this loss of motivation? Have you noticed the things that you normally really, get jazzed up to do, you're not as energized to do them? And when they say yes, then we can say, okay, well, let's think about what to do in this situation. But it can really sneak up on you.
Would you see this challenge? Because I think this is a very human challenge. I've got all these problems I have to help my team solve. I need to get in there this morning and generate some ideas for attracting new employees. I need to get in there this morning and generate ideas for getting more product in here to satisfy the demand that we have. And then what happens is we skip the important for the urgent.
Right.
So the urgent is the things that we just talked about. Are they absolutely their issues? Are we serving our team well long term if we deprive ourselves of sleep, if we deprive ourselves of exercise, if we deprive ourselves of good nutrition, if we deprive ourselves of reflective time or prayer time in the morning? Of course, we know the answers to that are yes, but we're tough, strong leaders. We can get through this, can't we?
You touched on two things, or at least in my mind, the way I think of them. One of them is we get lost in what's a priority expectation versus a reactive expectation. And as we start to feel the load grow, we really need to take time, even carve out some time to reassess the expectations of what's reasonable, what's going to drive success from our role for our business, and then understand what's a reasonable expectation for today. When we don't have a reasonable expectation for today, we just know what we didn't accomplish today, and so we can leave disappointed and feeling maybe even heavier than we started. That was one piece.
Could I stop you?
Yeah.
So the reasonable expectation for today, is that a mental discipline that you follow and suggest to your clients?
It is. So,
okay. Say more about that.
Yeah. Well, I just love the idea of entering a day knowing what's the most important way that I can spend my time today. What are the deliverables that I want to advance? Who are the people that I want to talk to? Who are the individuals I want to invest in today? And for me, it works best to know that even yesterday.
The night before.
The night before. So when I wake up, I don't spend a lot of time getting lost in what's new. We know priorities might come up and fires might come up, and we're the person to address them. But I'd always like to know what's my best for today before I enter the day. And people have different means and tools. I use a very simple checklist on a notepad, but I stay committed to it. And there are times when I'm tempted not to, but I know that I'm going to be best, and I'm going to honor the responsibilities, and I'm going to model the follow through that's part of an overall message of clarity. We say what's most important, and we did what we said was most important, and so that's how I would approach it personally.
Okay. Another quick story that I'm reminded of as we're having this conversation. I'm speaking personally now, I had two situations in the last month, I guess, when I think back on it, when I did not honor my intentions or values within two conversations, two different people, two different settings. And I was fortunate. I realized it pretty quickly. I was able to apologize. I was given grace by the other person. There was some relational equity there that we were able to, recover. But I got to thinking, was there a common thread? Was there some reason why I was
off just
my
a little
game?
bit.
Yeah, off just a little bit. And it wasn't like way out there, but it still wasn't good. It was the type of thing a person who teaches this stuff, tries to model this stuff. I shouldn't have made those mistakes. And you know what? When I got to thinking about it, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but I hadn't slept well for the 2 weeks prior to that. I'm not quite sure why. I go in and out of these bouts of it, but
watching golf late at night, probably.
Yeah, no, that should put you to sleep. But I think it was really part. I'm not making an excuse. Well, it might sound like I'm making an excuse, but when I diagnosed it, I thought, you know what? That's part of a whole formula that I need to be practicing self-care. And you and I have talked a number of times that for a leader, self-care is not a selfish act. And that's what really we're talking about here. And it's understandable that many of our clients are feeling mentally, intellectually, perhaps even physically exhausted. But when they're experiencing that, they are unlikely to be able to lead their teams well, to build strong, cohesive leadership teams, to honor their organizational clarity, and they're unlikely to be able to contribute to the very near-term problems of their business, which may include supply chain issues and worker shortages.
That's right.
So what's a fundamental that you advise your clients on in this regard relative to self-care?
Yeah, well, thanks for that example. I think it's very relevant, and the thing that jumps out to me is it was subtle. It was a look back that enabled you to recognize, I wasn't sleeping the same way for the past 2 weeks. The idea of emotional exhaustion comes from different ways. It can be a workload issue or a lack of productivity for some reason that's out of my control and it's just frustrating. It can be just all the digital information that's coming at us that I'm not able to process. What surprised me, it can relate to relational strain too. It just causes us not to think as clearly when we're in the moment where we want to be thinking clearly, where we want to have positive energy, where we want to be fully present. And so self-care it's a strategy. It seems like a good thing to do. So often people feel guilty.
It's more important than that, isn't it?
It's a strategy. If you're a leader, your organization is better if you take care of yourself. This author, I can't think of right now, wrote a book one time, and he was talking about the spiritual disciplines, and he said a spiritual discipline, and I took it to some extent like self-care, is anything you do that will help you to love people more.
Oh, nice.
So if you need a nap on a Sunday, there's rest. If you need to get a small project done that's just clogging up your mind, if you need some time on a motorcycle, if you're a motorcycle rider, on the golf course, if you're a golfer, to be outside, to realize there are natural things that are in place that don't require something of you, that give you confidence that the world's going to continue if you're not perfect in every moment. Self-care and quiet time, learning, spirituality, physical health, all these pieces, they're good for our soul, but they're strategic for our organization too. And there's a strong encouragement to our clients to invest in those regularly.
And ourselves.
And ourselves.
So I would think back on these three themes that we're hearing that are very challenging in business right now. Again, the worker shortage, the supply chain, and inflationary issues and things of that nature. And the third one was the exhaustion. Is we're probably not going to get at the core of the first two unless we take care of the last one. Because more is being asked of business and organizational leaders right now. Because there's this confluence of events that most of us, whether our career is 10 years or 40 years, that we really haven't seen them before. They're all coming together for a variety of reasons. There's sociological changes, there's political changes, there's things coming out of the shutdown period that we had. that they're all coming together in ways that there isn't a particular formula for. And in order to address them well, help our organizations win, continue to build strong, cohesive leadership teams, and lead forward with a strong why and a strong behavioral standard, we need to be healthy and take care of ourselves. Self-care is a foundational issue.
We sure do. This conversation in some ways is analogous to self-care, that we're stopping, coming out of the race and the effort that we're putting in to think about what's most important, and to be reminded and affirmed that we need to take care of ourselves, and when we do, we're going to think more clearly, and the other things that you mentioned will fall in place.
Building a solid foundation and making sure that it's always in place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the North Group podcast. For more information about North Group Consultants, please visit northgroupconsultants.com.